Right, everybody. Final talk of the day, best to the last. We've got Paul and Charlotte from Elmwood, London. And they're going to talk to you about all things Elmwood. So I'm going to pass over now and maybe go for it, yeah, guys? Yeah. Thank you very much. Round of applause.
Thank you for the introduction. We are Elmwood, London. We are part of a global studio, but we're specifically from the London branch. We're going to talk to you a little bit today about us, a little about what the studio does, but hopefully give you a few tips and tricks to help you on your journeys to become huge creative directors in the biggest agencies globally, hopefully. So this is our studio. Not quite. That's the view we look out on. But we are based in Covent Garden, in a road called Bow Street.
That is the Royal Opera House.
Directly opposite the Royal Opera House. So yeah, we've got an amazing view. You don't want to see the inside of our studio. There's nothing like that.
It's really nice.
It's a really nice space. But honestly, always welcome to come down, check us out, come for a beer or a coffee if that's the main thing to do. But yeah, come for a drink and say hi to us and get involved with the studio culture. We'd love to have you down. This is a little bit about like what we get up to on a daily do. So always going out to things like New Blood Festival. We're always trying to immerse ourselves in the new best talent that's going out in the world. We try and keep craft at the core in everything that we do. So whether it's doing screen printing, letter pressing, all that sort of stuff, it's a massive influence in the bits that we create as a team, so it's right at the heart of everything that we do going forward, and everything up to choosing some beautiful colour palettes from swatch books, which is a dull job but also super exciting, so you get to shape what everything's going to look like in the future. We have a team of about 70 of us in the London office, is that right?
Yeah, nearly 80 at the moment. Yeah.
And we are a huge cultural bunch. As you can see, we get into all sorts of shenanigans where we get guys in tights just for the shits and giggles. We have people dress up bananas because why not? We love to go to the pub at lunch, so always welcome to come to the pub at lunch with us. But more importantly, we've just got a really good culture where everyone's who they want to be and everyone gets to be themselves, but at the core of everything that we do is some really good creative that is award-winning. And this is a bit more of the team. Obviously, me and Charlotte are on the winning team.
With printed t-shirts, can I just
yeah,
say?
individual printed t-shirts.
Yeah, I did. So.
Yeah, we won Sports Day, no biggie, but yeah, we won.
That was no problem.
Do you want to talk about the makery?
Yeah, so one thing that we do at Elmwood for the last few years now is something called the makery. And this is something that internally some of the designers set this up along with some of the account managers, and every single month we do something different that's creative, that's not like part of the day job. So last month we went sign painting at a really cute little workshop in Shoreditch. Then this month we're doing lino printing. Next month we're doing chocolate making. After that we're doing pasta making. We've done wine tasting, so we get up to loads of different things. You can see here the screen printing and so on, and it's just really good to kind of keep those creative juices flowing. It's not just for the designers; it's for the whole studio. So whether you're in finance or in the accounts team, you get to kind of be part of this, and it's just something really fun that we do. And it's definitely something that I think we'll continue to do for years to come because it's an absolutely huge success. And this year, these are the ones that we did last year. So we did a 2023 wrapped of what the makeries were. You can see the team really get into this. So this was a really fun little presentation that kind of went through all the things that we did, who attended, and so on and so on. So cocktail making to candle making. It's just a lot of fun.
Anyways, here's some of our work in a neat little video, which hopefully you enjoy.
Have we got sound?
We should have sound.
I hope we've got sound.
It's not heavily reliant on sound, so it doesn't matter too much. But yeah, this is kind of the last year and a half to 2 years of Elmwood work, and it's a super exciting period for us. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. So despite that video being quite pack heavy, we do actually have like 3 chains to our company. So FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, packaging side is roughly 1/3 of our company. We've then got corporate branding and pharmaceutical as well in there. So if you guys aren't just purely into pack stuff, our agency does handle a lot of other stuff as well, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. So we thought we'd give you a little bit of an introduction of who we are at the agency and kind of what journey we've been on, not necessarily specific to Elmwood. I think that is probably going to help you most in terms of what you do next and like where you go and how you kind of carve your own path to your career. So me, I'm Charlotte and I'm Associate Creative Director at Elmwood. And actually my journey's been quite linear. So I came out of uni like you guys, I've got lots of internships started up. I'd already got some pre-plans, some kind of came as I went along, and it took me probably about 6 months to land a job, which is actually really good going. You know, I think sometimes you hope that you'll get a job straight away, and that just generally isn't the case. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because internships are ace. They're a great way of like really understanding where you want to be, you know, what sort of agency you want to work at, and how you want to work. So I did some in London, some in Manchester, kind of couldn't quite work out where I wanted to be, then landed at Elmwood, Leeds, absolutely loved it there. So I was like, right, I'm gonna settle on the north, that's where I want to be, I'm going to be in Leeds. So I spent 3 years in Leeds. I worked on a lot of challenger and retail brands. So when I say retail, I mean things like Morrison's and Tesco, them sort of brands, also challenger brands, like smaller brands that are kind of up and coming, that are challenging the status quo of what's happening with the big, what we call FMCG pack brands. So a lot of packaging, also a lot of branding in my first 3 years. Then decided to move to London, and here I got to work on some like really big brands, those global consumer brands that just take you into a slightly different space, and made my way up to design director at that point. I was like, oh, I missed the north. I'm gonna take another move. So I moved up to Love in Manchester. This was during COVID. It was like, I need something new. So I decided to kind of go back to my northern home and go to Love. It was basically one of my all-time favourite agencies, and it didn't disappoint. They were amazing. Absolutely loved working with the team at Love. Worked on some brilliant projects, but for some reason, I felt like my heart was in London, and to be fair, at Elmwood. So I got poached back to Elmwood about a year ago, and I've not regretted it. So it's been a really good journey. But essentially, my journey's been really linear in comparison to what you'll see with Paul, in that I've kind of made my way up through one company and kind of moved out and then moved back in, which has been really interesting. Sometimes not the best way to kind of move up the ladder, but also sometimes the best way to move up the ladder. It depends how you look at it. So it depends on the company. So I've got to work on some amazing brands. You can see here, a lot of this work is quite recent from Love. So working on brands like Haagen-Dazs and doing not only their core packaging and the look and feel for the whole of Haagen-Dazs, but also a lot of their limited editions. Also got to do limited editions for Glenfiddich, which is Chinese New Year, so this one's just come out. But to work with an amazing illustrator who's based in Canada, who essentially made every single one of those petals from real petals on the stag that you see on the front of the pack. So everything's completely handcrafted, which is absolutely stunning. And one of the best projects that I've worked on for that reason. Also worked with hotel chains like Hilton Hotels to create a luxury brand for them, and even with James Harden, who is a massive US basketball player who decided he wanted a range of wine, because why not? So that sort of identity has landed on like shoes as he's playing basketball, and cakes that he's kind of tossed because he doesn't give a shit, an ice sculpture. My design got made into an ice sculpture, and I realised that was the moment that I'd made it. But I've also got to work on some really, really big and long and drawn out strategic pieces. So one of the things that I did at Elmwood before I went to Love was work on the Galaxy and Dove redesign, which is a massive global redesign across the US, UK, China, all across the UAE as well, which is like Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. So that was absolutely incredible. We got to work on the core packaging, to the premium, new Fusions packaging that we're bringing out, all of their gifting ranges. So huge strategic pieces, quite different from some of the kind of more smaller limited edition pieces we brought out, and very different from a lot of the branding projects that I've done as well. That's a bit about me.
This is me, as you can see by the picture. I am design director at Elmwood, and this is a little bit about my unlinear path to my career. So 3 weeks after graduating, I landed my first internship, which was at this place. I will speak a little bit more detail about that when we go into the rest of the deck, but being in the right place at the right time allowed me to get that internship, which is something that I think is a really important little thing for you guys to know. But yeah, that's where I started off, and there was only 3 of us. So I was a bigger cog in a small agency, and I think that's really important to my personal development. I then got introduced into the world of FMCG, where I found my niche and what I love doing and how I've carved a career path out of that. I then moved to bulk nutrition because they approached me on LinkedIn and said, hey, do you fancy being creative lead here? I said, absolutely, let's do it. Loved it, then I hated it, so I quit. And then that kind of took me to here, where I really fell in love with design. Because up to this point, I was questioning whether I actually want to be a designer, which is ironic because I'm the design director. But yeah, I worked at some of the nation's, even potentially some of the world's best creative agencies, freelancing for 2 years. And it completely opened up my eyes to the opportunities in graphic design, and found that I love doing what I do. I'm good at what I do as well, which is the most important thing. I knew my self-worth, which is why I quit my job in the first place. And then Elmwood asked me to join them, and I gave them 6 months of freelancing before I said yes. But here I am now as design director at Elmwood. These are just a handful of the brands that I've worked on, most of which throughout my freelance career, so household names that are hugely successful, but also global as well. So things like Kellogg's and Heinz and Red Bull were some of the most kind of bizarre working experiences I've ever had, but it was also some of the best memories I'll have as a creative. And even things like Uni pizza ovens is something that I use every day, and someone will be like, yeah, I worked on that. So that's a nice little thing. If you go to the next slide, please. But these are 4 projects that I'd love to personally talk about, because each of them have something special in my heart as a creative. Byron Burgers is something that I won a wood pencil for from DNAD for creative writing. I was with Taxi Studio at the time, and I was only with them for 2 months, but I was in the initial creation stage, and it was all about how can the Byron Burgers company get more sales through Deliveroo, because it was during COVID times. They had 75 restaurants that got cut down to 20, so they were massively losing revenue, and I had a brain spark moment that going on Deliveroo is all about giving into the urge of getting something naughty, right? And their main product is burgers, and if you remove the B and the R from burger, you're left with urge. So it was just giving to the urge, which was what they went forward with, and now it's a hugely successful piece. So yeah, creative writing, wooden pencil. This one here is Stella Unfiltered. I love it because I think it's going to be one of those brands that is going to look like that for forever. It's very rare for beer brands or kind of premium alcohol brands to change their look and feel, especially one the size of Stella Artois. So working with that at JKR was one of the highlights of my career, I reckon, just being able to have a stamp on something that's going to hopefully last the test of time. Dolmio was my first ever job as design director. That will always be something that I look fondly on, regardless of how people's perception of the brand is, but I think the rebrand itself has helped change that perception, and it's actually doing really well in shops and younger audiences now purchasing the brand, which is what it was all about. And then Skittles is my current one, my current baby. We're completely flipping the norm on its head and really dialing up nonsensical, which is, as a brand, something that's in the heart of their ethos. I can't tell you too much about it because it's coming out in the next few months, but keep your eyes peeled. It is going to be on every corner of the world. But yeah, that's my 4 probably favourite projects of my career so far.
So what we thought we'd do is maybe talk less about us and less about the agency and actually give you some tips that we kind of noodled together and felt like would be the most important things maybe you could take out of leaving uni, starting to get a job, and kind of some of the things that we've learned along the way. So
and we would love to have heard at your stage as well.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
So these are our 13 top tips. I'll let you take this one away.
I knew you. First one, and absolutely the most important one, is be yourself. Like, obviously that's not what I look like every day. I wouldn't dressed up at a Pride event for that. But
as the office, this was in the studio.
This was in the studio, it's not me walking around the high
So it's relevant.
It's relevant. But what the point is on this one is, when you come for an internship or an interview, we don't care about your projects by that point. We already know that you're good enough to be a creative. What we want to know is, are you a cultural fit for our company? Will you get on with everyone? Do you see yourselves being invested to the point where you would really fit into the culture? So yeah, be yourself, it's really important.
Yeah, I think it's like, it goes hand in hand. It's really, we know you're good, as you said. You need to be a cultural fit in there. You just need to get on with the people that you work with. That's as much for you as it is for us, but also, you know, you need to be passionate, you need to bring some energy. You can be the quietest person in the room, that's absolutely fine. You know, you don't need to be really loud, but you need to get involved in things and be part of things to be able to be successful and show that you're really willing to work and be passionate about things. So we've got many people who are very loud, we've got many people that are very quiet, and it's a really nice balance, and you need both of those people in your agency, not just lots of loud people. I think it's just about how you show up every day, and how you apply yourself to different things.
And then you get weirdos like me as well.
Yeah, and then you get like really confident people like Paul. And building on that, be a sponge. So, you know, you're in a room full of mega talented people. Like, everyone that works at that agency has been handpicked, whichever agency you go to. You know, you've got the opportunity to pick their brains in real time, whether you're on an internship, whether you're a junior, whether you're a design director, it doesn't matter. You're working with some of the best people in the industry, so make that count and actually just absorb things. You always keep learning. You know, you don't stop learning no matter what age you get to. No matter what point in your career, and you need to kind of keep continuing that as you run through.
Definitely. This is my favourite one. Grab a beer, like, well, maybe make a cup of tea first, but the idea that, you know, you're talking to people. We're a collaborative bunch, that's how we do best in our industry and our field, but also speaking to people while you're making a cup of tea, understanding the projects they're on. You'll bounce ideas off naturally at that point. You'll also speak to people in the agency that you never would have crossed paths with, like the MD, for instance. It's a really good opportunity for you to kind of connect with them, and you know, you'll only ever do yourself some favours from doing that. But yeah, good conversations, and it takes the pressure off as well by talking to people about stuff. So
Yeah.
make a cup of tea and go to the pub.
Yeah, I mean that could literally be you going around asking someone if they want a cup of tea. You don't need to do that. That's not your job. That's not why you're there at all. But what it does do is give you the opportunity to just ask someone something, and it might be just that. It might be nothing else. But I remember I was making myself a selfish cup of tea in the kitchen, and the creative director came over whilst I was interning, and I had a conversation with him. And the next day I got a job. Because we sparked that conversation, he asked me what I was doing, I told him I'd got another internship that was starting next week. And of course it didn't come out of that conversation completely, but what it did do is put me forefront of his mind, and it gave me the opportunity to chat to him when I would have never dared to go over to him or to talk to him because he's too busy. And that's what the really great for as well. You know, whether you're drinking or not drinking, it doesn't matter. There's no pressure. It's just being in an environment where you can just chat to people rather than just work with them.
It also eradicates roles and positions by that point. Everyone's there to just have a good time generally, so people step out of the workplace and you can just talk to them as one-on-one people, so it's always a good position to be in when you're at the pub, personally. Can we see it?
Yeah, go for it.
It's a really small world out there. Even just speaking to two of the lovely students here today, they know a lot more about the industry than I do already, which is crazy. But just be careful what you're doing on things like social media. It can come back to bite you. But also, more importantly, connect with people. You're only like a stone's throw away from knowing another person's name. So connect with people on LinkedIn, connect with people on Instagram, get messaging people, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to know someone that knows someone, and it can be the easiest way into a position or a role, and also just help you along your career path.
Yeah, and absolutely ask for connections. If you're interning somewhere and they're like, oh yeah, I know someone who works at that agency, just ask. Just ask, can I get an email? Can I speak to that person? You know, if you don't ask, you don't get. You've got to be bold sometimes. You've got to just ask for what you want, because no one's going to give it to you on a plate. And pay attention to what you enjoy doing. So we do get to be the smug ones who love their job. That's really interesting, because a lot of my friends work in finance and they hate it, and I'm the one that loves the job. But you don't always love every bit of it. Like, there'll be parts of your job where it's hard, or you don't love what you're working on. You know, it's not inspiring you in the way that you thought it was. And that's absolutely fine, but I think it's really important to find what you love and keep doing more of that. So if you're like, I really love working on these branding briefs, I really quite like working in a more corporate space, I'm not really that keen on packaging. That starts to like help you navigate maybe what agency you'd want to work at. You know, don't just keep doing work that you're not enjoying for the sake of doing work. I think just pay attention to what you actually love doing and keep doing more of that, even within an agency. So one thing that we do is, if designers have got an ambition to kind of be in a certain space, you know, we talk about that, and we'll make sure that projects are sort of angled to what they want to do, not necessarily just what they're good at. So I think it's really important to speak up and think about what you want from the job, and from an internship, and where you pick, and what you do.
Also, passion comes across so well in our industry. If you're passionate about something, let it show, because 9 times out of 10 the agency will actually get behind you for you to be able to pursue that passion and, you know, really take it on, because it'll only benefit them as well. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind that. Right.
And weird one, but don't necessarily just take the first job you got offered. We've both got a story for this actually, and we didn't know until we chatted about it, but it's like that temptation to be like, oh my god, I've just been offered a job, I've got to take it. But sometimes it's not necessarily the right thing to always do, even as an intern, even though you need a job, even in this economic crisis that we're in. Because actually, you know, your first job really does start to kickstart your career, and it does start to define what you do next. It doesn't completely define you. You can change, you can move on, you can reinvent yourself. You know, you've kind of shown that through going freelance, but it does sort of put you on a path. And if it doesn't feel right, then it might not be right. So interning is great for that reason. You know, I said at the start, it's so important because it gives you the opportunity to kind of understand where you want to be. Do you want to be a big agency, a small agency? Do you want to work with, you know, really competitive people? Do you want to work with just 3 people on their own and be a big fish in the big part of those big conversations? Do you want to work on packaging? Do you want to work on branding? Do you want a mix of everything? Do you want to be hands-on doing lino cutting? You know, all of these things exist, but you kind of have to find that. And I actually got offered a job I was interning, and I got offered a job from doing interviews at an agency. It was a really established agency. I was like, this is madness. I've just been offered a job as an intern. I've got all these internships lined up. I don't know what to do, because it was in their corporate branding team. And I was like, but I don't know if I want to just go into corporate branding at this point as an intern, as a junior. And I turned it down because my gut told me that it just wasn't right, and I was absolutely bricking it because I just turned down a job. And I actually then went straight after that to the internship at Elmwood, which I never would have done had I have not turned this job down. And the rest is history. So for me, I look back now, everything happens for a reason, of course, as they say, and the right thing happened, and I'm really grateful for that. Whatever you do, you'll be grateful for it in the end. Even if at the time it doesn't quite work out, you'll look back and go, oh, I'm glad I did that. It'll always go that way.
Similar experience to me. I was interning with the company of 3 at the time, and I got offered a job at a much bigger packaging agency. And I was always like, oh, this is such a bad situation to be in, because I always wanted to go into packaging. But I had no experience with them, and I knew that my work-life balance with the 3 was perfect. They both had kids, they started work at 10. They absolutely clocked off at 6 because they wanted to get back to see their kids before they went to bed. So I was like, right, they're my hours set. They enjoyed a beer on a Friday. I love a beer. The work was half decent, but it wasn't absolutely what I wanted to do. But I knew, in terms of where I was as a junior, that it was probably perfect for me to just get some really good understanding of everything from digital design, artworking, print processes, all the fundamentals I knew that would only benefit me in the future. It then so turned out that 3 years later, the company that offered me the job before that I said no to reached out to me on LinkedIn and then pulled me into Ziggurat. So if I hadn't taken that first job, it wouldn't have given me the opportunity to then join a bigger, better company 3 years down the line. So yeah, there's definitely an element of luck and skill and everything, but actually at the same time, sometimes it's better to go with what you think is right at that moment, instead of thinking of the big picture, because as a junior, there's so many opportunities out there. Just go with one that you think is right at the time, and the rest will kind of work itself out. Yeah, I'm a big fan of literally reading everything. I've got 2 books here which we're going to give away to 2 of the best questions at the end. But read everything from books, blogs, articles, podcasts, things that are going to inspire you outside of visual imagery. It's also a case of they're going to make you a little bit more, I don't like using the word grammatically correct, but there's a difference between someone that knows their shit and someone that knows their shit. So things like just reading will help bolster your just your knowledge of the industry as well, and everything that's going on in the world. It's to be able to speak into a room to people like you guys. It doesn't come naturally. Sometimes you need to actually learn those skills. Even things like speaking to an MD, they're going to be in a completely different world to you, and having a little bit of knowledge of what's happening around their world is always key as well. But yeah, I don't know if you've got anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I think you've got to know what's going on in design as well. Not just in the world, you really need to know what's going on in the world, because that affects everybody. It affects all your consumers, it affects all your clients, it affects all your team, depending on where you are in your career. But also knowing what's going on in design, what's the best thing that's happening right now. Not necessarily what's trending, it's just what is really good design, and you kind of need to keep up with that and read articles and listen to other people that are experts in different fields and know what makes these things. I think it's just really important to kind of constantly keep yourself inspired, keep yourself informed, get yourself away from the Mac, get yourself away from Pinterest, and find other avenues for inspiration that might not even be pictures.
It's also really good for just switching off and escapism. I always get laughed at from my wife because I read fancy books, but I don't care because it allows me to escape from reality and the real everyday scenarios that are going on. So
we spent a lot of time on screens, definitely.
Yeah, digital world to analog is much appreciated. Go on.
And bad feedback is good feedback. You'll hear this from your lecturers. They'll love this one, but it's true. You need feedback. You can't just keep going and going and going with work. You even will get to a point where you're I'm at a wall, I don't know what to do. And sometimes that feedback will be, yeah, great, love this. But usually you're looking for more than that. It's very rare you kind of just want someone to go, yeah, great, put it out there. You want people to challenge you and ask you questions and like push you and make it better. And sometimes that feedback can be easy, sometimes it can be hard. And you know, as designers, you develop a thick skin over time. It takes a while, but you do, because your clients will always pick the route that you didn't want them to pick, or you know, perhaps not like something in the way that you do, and so they'll change it and make it look shit, and you'll be really annoyed about it. But that's part of kind of listening to them as experts in their field and what they think is the right thing as well, because it's all about being, you know, in this partnership. And you can always challenge it. Generally, feedback will just, bad or good, will make it work better. And there is an opportunity for you to push back on that as well. So you don't always have to just take it as gospel. You kind of have to really understand and work out what the feedback is and then how that impacts your work. But what you can't do is ignore it, ever. You know, you've got to listen to it, even if you decide to push in a different direction.
And ultimately as well, imagine if you only ever presented work and everyone was like, oh, I love it. You'd be such a rubbish creative, because every time you think you nailed it first time, and that just is not reality. So yeah, getting used to people finding flaws in your work and actually welcoming flaws, like, right, tell me what's wrong. Don't be like, what do you like about it? Always start off with, okay, what's not working, what don't you like? Because then they're the bits that require the most work, but will also take it that level above.
And ask why, all the time. Just keep asking why. Be like that annoying kid that just like, well, why? I don't know. But your job is to be a creative problem solver. Whatever avenue of design that you go into, this is what design does. It solves problems creatively. And to get under the skin of any brief, you just have to keep questioning things. You have to ask why. You need to know why you're doing it, why people need it, why people might want it. You know, you've got to find a problem to be able to solve it, to give a solution, and that it won't have any meaning unless you do that. So no design should be for design's sake. You've got to kind of think about, well, why are we doing this at all times? So ask yourself that question, ask other people that question. You know, always keep reconsidering and challenging things and being that annoying person in the room.
I think a lot of the time as well, when you're doing client-based projects, is there's always a reason to why something has to be done. So for instance, with Dolmio, consumers were thinking that it's an old Italian brand with
Puppets.
fake heritage, and it was and puppets, and it was cheap. And actually, Dolmio were like, yeah, do you know what? We are a cheap brand, but actually we want to be way more aimed at a younger audience. We want people to recognise us instantly. So I think you've kind of got 0.3 seconds where your head decides whether you want to buy something or not in the supermarket. So there was a real big piece about how well it stands out on shelf and how quickly you see the branding. And your perception of a brand can instantly change like that. So there's always like science behind stuff in our industry. So you always have to ask why, because that is ultimately what drives a certain decision.
Yeah, and brands like Dolmio, for example, might not be your bougie taste. I don't know, you know, what sort of pasta sauce you're into, but like I'll make it from scratch because my husband's Italian. But at the same time, there's a need for all of these things. You know, we're in an economic crisis. There's people that want to buy this brand for quickness and for ease, and you know, to make sure that they can kind of feed their family, but not also look like they're buying something on the budget. So I think it's asking those questions and just getting under the skin of why you're doing what you're doing, whether you like it, you buy it yourself or not. And can your idea fit on a post-it note? So this is something I challenge you all to do in uni right now, but also when you kind of make it into the industry as well. Generally, if it can't fit onto a post-it note, then you're probably overcomplicating it. This is kind of a similar sort of thing to the elevator pitch, but sort of a little less corporate. But essentially, you need to know what your idea is. What was your insight? What was your challenge? And then how have you solved it? And you need to be able to do that in the least amount of words possible to know that you're going to hit home on what your idea is. So definitely, with whatever you come up with, challenge yourself to like, okay, this is my big idea, but all of these things, if I was going to put this on a post-it note, what's the idea? And genuinely, some of like the best projects that we've done have been solved by just kind of narrowing our thinking to kind of really understand, well, what is that? Or we've just spotted a post-it note on the wall and gone, that's it, it's that one, you know? So I think it's, again, getting off your screens as well, like genuinely write it on a post-it note, stick stuff up on the wall, like look at what's around you and think about how you're gonna tackle something.
Yeah, there's always an element of winging it. I still wing it most days. It's just part of being a design director, but also at any stage in your career, because if you're not winging it, you're not putting yourself out there to then develop and learn more. It's ultimately about being out of your comfort zone. It's very easy as a creative to stay at the same level throughout your entire career and just coast, right? Some people, that absolutely fine. Like a lot of people have careers where they just want to be a designer and that's that, and they can stay at that level and have a happy lifestyle. For me personally, I love being out of my comfort zone. That's how I thrive, that's how I develop, that's how I learn. It also produces much better work because it goes back to the whole reading situation and being looking further afield for ideas. By being out of my comfort zone, I'm reading articles about certain things I don't understand, but it's allowing me to then have input into certain projects that I'm working on. So yeah, I think you've always got to have an element of putting yourself out of the place where you feel most comfortable, because that's how you're going to develop and thrive and grow.
Yeah, and don't wait for people to teach you things. You've got to create your own opportunities. You know, I think you've probably found that a lot at uni. People aren't going to teach you how to do everything. You've got to take it away and be like, I want to solve this in this way, but I can't because I don't know how to do that. Well, teach yourself how to do that. You know, find ways to do it. Or in industry, often it's about finding the right people to work with. So it kind of shifts because obviously your job becomes more specific. So the amount of amazing illustrators, animators, web developers, like people in completely different fields that we've worked with, that have enriched our work and made it a million times better, because we're not necessarily the expert in that field. We've got a vision, we know what we want, we can direct it, we can, you know, make sure that that vision is brought to life, but it's about, you know, finding new opportunities to do things, even if you don't think you can do it. You know, at your level, it's absolutely about getting on YouTube and finding ways to do it. I mean, you've got everything at your fingertips to learn how to do things, other than time, because I appreciate a lot of this stuff just takes time, you know, and you've got to just put in the hours and the effort to visualize something the way you want to do it, or find someone who can. You know, if you don't want to learn how to do photography, find someone on a different course that is good at photography, you know, and it'll help you to kind of do that in a really great way.
Yeah, luck plays a huge role, there's no denying that. Being in the right place at the right time can definitely influence things. So my first role at Deadeye, my friend actually got offered the internship, but he received a call when we were in London together, and he couldn't make it in for the week they wanted him, so he said, oh, I'm with my friend Paul, he's looking for an internship, do you want to have him? And then, yeah, 3 years later, I was still there. So luck plays a huge role in everything that you do, whether it's securing an internship or, you know, going for that permanent role somewhere. And also passion and persistence is key. It doesn't matter if you get a no here or there, just keep on at it, because ultimately, actually that leads into slide 13, doesn't it? That you're going to be unlucky along the way, that is just how the course plays out, but it's about how you kind of keep yourself going, you get back up after the knockdowns, and sending dry emails to companies, 9 times out of 10 you won't hear back, but you've got to keep sending them out to be able to get one return. And on that, things like LinkedIn are hugely important. Like, I got all of my work as a freelancer through LinkedIn. I didn't use a single recruiter, and that's just because I messaged people saw me posting things about my work. I became relevant in a very small pond. So yeah, luck definitely plays a huge part in everything in our industry, I'd say.
Yeah, but when we say luck, I mean luck doesn't happen when you sit around and do nothing. Obviously luck happens when you're doing stuff, and those opportunities come up because you're in the right place at the right time. If you don't put yourself in those places, if you don't find ways to meet people or to be somewhere, like, they aren't gonna come to you. You know, you've got to do it yourself. It's on you to kind of define what you do next, in whether it's in design or not in design. Like, you've really just got to find your own luck, I suppose. But timing is definitely of the essence, and sometimes, you know, you can be the best intern, but they might just have happened to fill the role. But what they'll probably do is then give you 5 emails of people that they know that they can recommend you to at other agencies, and then you'll find a role there, you know. So you could call that luck, or you could call that you worked really hard to get that internship and just happened to be unlucky and then lucky, you know. So everything happens for a reason, as they say, but it also happens because you make it happen. Right. With what? Go ahead. We thought we'd leave some open space to ask quite a few questions. Because I think one of the things that we love is, you know, kind of giving you an opportunity to kind of learn more by asking the right things that you want to know. So these are all the things that we think you might want to know, and we hope that they're helpful. And I hope that you've learned a little bit more about us and about Elmwood, but also really about what you do next. But I think it's really important to ask questions and ask why all the time. So Paul has managed to commandeer a couple of books, so the best 2 questions.
Yeah, why not?
We'll give away some little books.
Already got a hand up in the corner.
So say with the client and they're just being a bit of a pain, constantly wanting you to change stuff.
Yeah.
How would you keep the enthusiasm and confidence up and reset so you don't lose motivation to do the job? How would you reset yourself so that you can keep in the mindset of this job's going to be good and it's going to get finished?
Well,
I'll tell him to F off.
that's I mean, it's quite an easy one because it happens daily. I'm not just this is what happens in the industry. You're nodding at me because you know. You know, that always happens. We'll have these brand ideas and clients aren't brave enough or aren't ready for it, or they don't want to sell it into their stakeholder. Generally, if you get smaller clients, they're either really brave or really not. And I think the key there for me is community and having the right people around you. So if you're working in a great team, you won't feel disheartened like that, because you'll have someone in your ear saying, you know, this is fine, we can make this work, why don't we go away and thrash it out and we'll work out this, and we'll take their feedback and we'll listen to it, and it might be what we have to do, or we might be able to solve it a different way. We might be able to give them what they want, but in a way that's, you know, how we want to do it and more beautiful. So I think that, of course, you're always going to feel a little bit disheartened, but it's about having the team around you. And this is why it's so important to be somewhere where you feel like you can be part of a team. I think when you're at uni, you often get feedback, and you go away and you're on your own, and you go home to your uni mates or your parents or wherever you live, and you're just sort of in your own thoughts. You haven't got that camaraderie around you. So I think that's, for me, one of the best things about being in an agency. You don't get time to feel like that, because there's always ways to resolve it.
And ultimately, they've come to you asking for a solution to a problem, and we are experts in our field at doing that. Take the AA, for instance. We don't know how to fix a broken chassis on a car, but we do know how to do some shit hot creative that will drive purchase intent. So you've got to kind of back yourselves and say, no, I know what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is based on science and results and research. We're doing this for the sake of the company, and just find a middle ground.
Do you think having loads of jobs on your CV gives you a bad reputation? And is there any advice you'd give for us if that is
I would not say having loads of jobs on your CV is a bad thing at all.
Depends why you left.
Depends why you left. If it's a week somewhere, and then 3 months somewhere else, and then 2 years somewhere, and then a week again, it would look a little bit ropey. But if it's like, you know, between the first 2 years of your career, you've done a month at all these places, you can just say, I was trying the water. I wanted to find my niche within the industry. I wanted to work with different teams to see what I wanted to work on projects-wise, but with teams, etc. It can be location-based. Oh, I didn't know if I wanted to work in London, so I did some in Leeds, I did some in Manchester, I did some in London. But it also, for me personally, just shows an eagerness to want to learn and explore and develop. I wouldn't see it as a negative at all.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think you learn so much at each place that you go to. It's okay to not like somewhere necessarily. I think the key is to not bad mouth somewhere. I think that, you know, if you do get challenged on them sort of things, but I think it does definitely show that you're keen. But it is a watch out to like make sure that when you do go somewhere, this is why it's important to find the right places, right? And it's also why you have a probation. You have a 3-month probation, so if you left somewhere after 3 months, that sort of starts that argument. You know, if you're jumping from one job to another every year, you will get challenged on that, and you need to have, you know, a good answer for it, and you need to be making sure that the next job that you're applying for really is somewhere you wanna really settle, and you will, because you'll find the right place eventually. So yeah, it's a tricky one because it's totally dependent on circumstances, but to be honest, I don't spend much time looking at CVs. I focus more on portfolios and chatting to people.
But another good point that I'd make on that as well, say if you had 10 work placements or internships, but only 3 of them are relevant to the position that you're applying for, remove the other 7.
Yes, take away the 7.
Take away the 7 and say, oh, by the way, I've worked at other places which I'd love to talk to you about. So it offers a bit of intrigue and invites you into that room, but only show the ones that are going to be relevant to that certain position. And it's the same with portfolios. Don't show projects, A, that you're not fond of, because why would anyone else be fond of it if you're not? Secondly, only show projects that are relevant to specific roles. So, for instance, if you were coming to us for a packaging role, but you only had corporate branding, we'd be like, oh, mate, this is great stuff. We can clearly see you're a talented designer, but you can't show any experience working in pack here. So it's going to be difficult for us to offer you anything off the back of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We always say you're only as good as your worst project, and the point is just don't put your shit projects in there, you know. And that's not because it's a shit piece of work. That's because if you don't love it, I'm not going to love it, because you're not going to talk about it in a way that you really like it. So if you've got 3 amazing projects, or 3 amazing projects plus 2 mediocre projects, I prefer you to just talk to me about the 3, you know, and tell me about what you know, also want to work on, and spend the rest of the time talking about what you're passionate about, not looking through work that you're like, I like this, but it's a little bit shit. Or I've genuinely had like students say that to me, I like this, but it's a bit shit. And I'm like, well, stop talking then, because I don't want to hear the rest.
I've genuinely spoken to someone before,
Yeah.
and I don't like this project, but I've kept it in because I'm like, oh,
Yeah, so
I
just
don't
take
like it if you don't like
it out. If you don't
Yeah.
like it, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point.
Not really a question, but just to build on that. I think when you put your portfolios together, think about who you're going to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure you looked at their website, look at their latest work, and even start by saying, I really like these projects you did, so I'd like to share this work because I think there's a connection, or that. And immediately you've done that, and you've got, because it's not your CV, it's the person in the room and how you engage. That's what gets you the job.
Yeah.
Sometimes you not may not have the best portfolio, but how you talk about it and present yourself is the thing that gets you the job.
Absolutely. I couldn't
Articulating
agree
the
more.
work is key in our industry.
Yeah.
Being able to articulate through an internal crit, or whether it's with your clients, like the way you speak about projects is sometimes the difference between it getting over the line with a client or not. So it can be shit hot creative, but if you say not very good things about it, it's never gonna work.
And this is the thing, like, you don't have to be a natural storyteller, you don't have to be a naturally extroverted person. There's things that you can learn and tools that you can take on, there's books that you can read, there's courses that you can go on. Find like what are the things that are holding you back, and work on those things as much as you work on design, because honestly design is a world where you're pitching your work. You're pitching your work to clients. You're pitching your work to your design director. You're constantly having to engage with people and talk to people and do things like this that we would have been bricking it 5 years ago. But you know, you learn to do these things, and it sounds scary at this point, but there is, you know, there's tools that you can take on to kind of get over those things. Like, no one, you know, shouldn't be able to do it, even if you're the quietest person in the room, as I said earlier.
But yeah, tailor your CV is the outcome of that question.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So when you was looking at doing your placements and everything,
Yeah.
how did you go about it? Did you look at like job websites for different placements, or did you email the companies individually by the head of who's over everything?
Well, I did it quite a while ago, so it might be a little bit different now. But I emailed, so I was on LinkedIn and also kind of finding different agencies and emailing general mailboxes, which do generally go through to the designers and the creatives that run the internship schemes and stuff. But yeah, I was reaching out to people that I thought, in fact, there's a really good example. We've just taken on a really amazing midweight designer, and she messaged me on LinkedIn. And now, obviously, we get lots of people messaging us, but she didn't say, can I send you my CV or portfolio? Are you looking for, for people? We'd put on an ad to say that we're looking for senior designers, and she was at the time working as a junior, wanting to be a midweight. She actually came to me and she went, I really love what you do. I'm really interested, and I was wondering if you've got a really short amount of time for a chat. And now normally, like, you just say often, no, I haven't got time for that. But for some reason, I was like, I feel like, I don't know, I like how ballsy she was to just be like, have you got time for a chat? I have got time for a chat. And it kind of turned into a mini interview, and a couple of months later, she's working with us. So, you know, and we didn't even have a job opportunity for that role at the time, but I just had an inkling that maybe she'd got something about her. And, you know, when I saw her work, obviously that was really evident, and, you know, sold the rest in. So I think it's about making connections. It's about going on one placement and asking about, where did you intern? Where have you worked at before? Who do you know? You know, and this is what things like going to the pub really helps with. We're not like reinforcing drinking culture. Although, you know, me and Paul are quite partial. But this is where you do have a lot of those conversations. And I've got, there's a few of our friends that are like adamant we never drink. Like Tim is one of our design directors, and you know, he's never drunk in his life. That's just his choice. But he's always at the pub with his Coca-Cola and always in that conversation. And I think that's really key.
What's your favourite drink?
Mine? Oh, wine.
Guinness. I was very different to Charlotte. I was old school. I used to knock on doors and just walk in.
Did you?
Yeah.
Good.
I had I'll be on my own. I drink brandy occasionally, you know. I had a leather-bound portfolio, which I was so chuffed with, and in hindsight, it was so shit. But, I used to knock on doors.
Have a physical portfolio box.
I loved it. Yeah. I used to knock on doors.
Uncomfortable thing to carry around tube stations, but.
Oh yeah. Going around London with a portfolio was awful. Like, I used to knock on doors, you say like, look, I'm in the area. I'd love to just quickly like understand what you do as an agency, but also show you some of my stuff. And it was that process that got me back at Ziggurat, because they remembered who I was when I was a junior, well, at the time a graduate, and they're like, yeah, we remember that project in your portfolio that you showed us 3 years ago. So
Wow.
yeah, emails work. Emails definitely work. Knocking on doors definitely works. But you've got tools in your hands now, like LinkedIn, which is such an easy way of getting your name known by people in industry. And as long as you're active on it, you're sharing, you're liking, you're commenting, your name will instantly be like, oh, I remember that person's name. I don't know why, but it's already there. It's just like sowing those seeds, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're first or second years, absolutely. I think I didn't do any kind of placement year, but I actually got to work with Sophie for 6 months at Love, well, 8 months at Love. which is such an opportunity, you know, and I've seen you go to other agencies and you talk to me about people that I know, and I think that shows just how valuable that time is. You feel like at the time, gosh, it's another year that I'm not going to be earning, I'm not going to be in industry, but you do earn, because actually internships now do pay much better than when I was a junior, and not everywhere is as good as other places, but the point is it's so incredibly valuable to have that time in industry and to work with people, and generally that's, you know, you stepping out of uni already with all of those placements, or already with all of that experience and all of those contacts. So if, I don't know what level everybody is here, but if you are in that sort of first year level and questioning whether to do it, I actually think it's a great thing.
But also get paid. No one likes to give away ideas for free.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to.
I did a free internship.
A lot of the time,
and
you
really
guys
great.
are bringing in ideas that we would never think of, because you don't think of the parameters that we already know from industry. So you just come up with some crazy ideas and we're like, fuck, that's wicked. The client will never go for it, but it sparks ideas for us internally. So make sure you get freaking paid. Trust me. Anyone else? Yep. Oh, there's quite a few now. Yeah.
We've had a lot of speakers that are working in London this week, and we've had a few that have stayed northern, but I was just wondering if you think we would benefit from at least some time working in London, or whether you think it doesn't really matter.
I can answer this
Good
one.
question. Yeah.
So I'm originally from the Midlands, and everyone at my uni, a little bit like this kind of uni vibe, where I lived at home and went to the uni that was local to me, and most of the people on the course have stayed there and have continued to stay there. My ambition was that once I graduated, I needed to find a job, and to find a good job, and there was no local good jobs around me, like apart from going to Manchester, which still was, you know, a commute. And actually now you've got an opportunity to sort of travel much easier, because you can do remote working. But back then, 5 days a week in the office, you know, I didn't want to be commuting an hour a day and not being able to like socialise, because I've got a £20-30 train fare to kind of handle every day. So sometimes it doesn't work in that way. But I went straight down to London to do internships, because to be honest, there's way more opportunity to do them down there. There's some really great agencies up north, especially in Leeds and in Manchester, but also in places like Glasgow and stuff like that. The challenge is there's not that many of them, whereas in London there is tons. There's so many agencies, and they're really probably geared up that little bit more to offer internships and to offer like really good programs where you're going to get the most out of it. So I would always say, absolutely, it's such an opportunity as well to like be in another city. You know, even if it's not London, there's other cities that you could go to as well. You know, there's places like Amsterdam and New York, and I know it sounds crazy, but you can apply for these things, you can do these things. But it's all about getting the experience. You know, you can still land yourself back up here if that's your heart. You know, if that's where you want to live and you don't actually want to move more than an hour from home, fine, that's not a problem. But you're never going to get the experience if you don't push yourself.
It also depends on circumstances, individual circumstances, and also your niche, right? So Glasgow has Thirst Craft, which is one of the best drinks agencies in the UK. You would expect them to be in London, but they're not. They're in Glasgow and they're holding the fort there. So if you want to work for a specialised design agency like them, then London is not the right place to go to. But it's also, you know, do you want to live in London? I was there for a year and I hated it. I live outside of it now, but it just did not suit me to my core. Like, I remember waking up to a red London bus going outside my window every morning. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, it drove anxiety mad, and I now live in the countryside, but I'm still very well connected to London. But I was a bit like Charlotte. I have such high ambitions myself that I'm not going to say out loud, don't worry. But London as a central hub was probably the only place that could give me the stepping stones that I know I need to step on to be able to be the designer that I want to be when I'm older.
Also, it's so different visiting versus living there. Like, I actually don't live in the centre of London, but when I was doing my internships, I was like right in the thick of it, and I think there's just so much to do, so many things to go to, you know, even like those makery sessions, or you can just go to the theatre after work, or you can get, I used to always apply for free TV tickets and go to like loads of different airings of TV shows after work just because they're free, and it was a fun thing to do. You know, there's just loads of things that you can do, and you know, all the people that you're working with are living nearby, so you find that you'll have impromptu conversations and drinks, and you know,
it's full of culture, it's full of
it's
insightful.
great. I love it there.
Yeah, it's a good bubble, but no, you don't need to
Yeah.
go there if you don't want to. No one's gonna make you.
Yeah. But that's the thing, you don't have to live there to get the experience there. You can do it for a short term. You can see it as like you're doing uni for 3 years. I'm gonna do placements for 6 months to a year, and I'm gonna do it this way and find a way to do it. It's hard because it's expensive. You know.
But also find an agency that has good balance. At Elmwood, we only do 1 day a week in the office, so people live all over the.
We only have to do 1 day a week.
Sorry, yeah, we only have to. I only do 1 day a week in the office. We're only contracted to do 1 day a week in the office. I've got a dog that comes first, so I can't go. But that allows people to live all across the UK and work for a London global office on global projects, but live anywhere in the UK as long as they come in once a week.
We've also got someone living in Israel, in Tel Aviv. We've got someone living in Dubai, and these are all like because their partners have got jobs out there, or they've needed to go for a different reason and things like that. And it means that they can still continue. I also worked from Italy for a couple of weeks last year because we do a scheme where you can just work from anywhere for like up to 6 weeks a year. So it's quite nice to like open my laptop on a Sunday with a see in the background.
Let's not forget Jay in Costa del Liverpool.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah, I think there's a lot that COVID's given us, but I'd absolutely say being in the studio is so valuable. And I'm a massive advocate of kind of just being in the room with people and being able to like thrash ideas out and be around.
Yeah, I only joke about working 1 day a week. I'd go more if I could, but it's so valuable for us as creatives to be collaborative and just people. It's so important. Yeah. There were a couple more questions over that side. Yeah, go on.
So, as someone that's like just starting out and doesn't have commercial work in their portfolio, how do you try and make your portfolio stand out when you're competing against people that do have that experience with opportunities?
I actually get asked that so often. Find live briefs that are out there and do extra work. I know that sounds savage and I hate doing it myself, but sometimes if you really want to get into a packaging agency, for example, you have no packaging stuff in your portfolio, create a brief for yourself that allows you to do a piece of packaging work, or go on DNAD, they'll always have live briefs up, or New Blood Awards, all that sort of stuff where you can get inspiration to think, actually, I would do that differently, and this is how I do it.
Yeah.
But also, just like rework some of your student work. I think there's always some really good merit to go back and readdress something that you only had 6 weeks to do, and give it another 2 weeks of your time to really get it pushed over that line. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The idea of doing extra work on a Saturday and Sunday is not ideal, but sometimes it requires it to give you that, extra leg up.
But equally, you're starting out, why would you have commercial work in your portfolio? You don't need it. I wouldn't ever expect you to have, as an intern, actual commercial work in your portfolio. So I didn't, for one. So I wouldn't even worry about that. I think we'll judge you on the level of your thinking and your ability to design, and actually it's more about the thinking than it ever is the execution as well. I think the execution is really important, but really it's about understanding how you work, how you think, how you're going to interrogate a brief and come up with ideas. That doesn't need to be a live brief.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I don't, because I can't be arsed, if I'm being honest. I can't be bothered to maintain them all. During lockdown, I started something called Let's Talk, where I would invite guest speakers to just come and speak about their experiences. So we had everyone from Simon Dixon from Dixon Baxi, Matt Boyce, who's a kinetic type illustrator, That was the only website I've ever had, and it wasn't even about myself. I think a PDF portfolio is sufficient, as long as the storytelling comes in. So something that I always try and get into my portfolios is, imagine I can't be in that room, but I still want to get myself across in that portfolio. So I'll write in my style, I'll use only lowercase. I think uppercase makes things sound like super shouty, and I just want people to think that I'm in the room with them. So I think the thing with websites is you can't govern how they're going through it. With a portfolio, there's a beginning and an end, and you go all the way through it. With a website, people can click on that, and then that, and then that, and then you're not instantly going to put your first best project at the start.
With portfolio, you kind of want to get to the end, don't you? You always want to.
Yeah.
You always want to flip through, even if you start going quicker and quicker and quicker. You always seem to end up at the end. Whereas a website, you don't necessarily do that, but you'll get completely different advice from different people. Depends how their brain works and whether they prefer something like a website where they can pick and choose versus a PDF portfolio or a pitch deck like this is done on an app called Pitch, which is really good because then you can constantly update it and it's always live. What I would say is, yes, you can upload your work to things, but to get noticed at your level, the best thing to do is to get talking to people. So get yourself at portfolio reviews. I remember a couple of years ago, I think Elmwood offered out like a portfolio surgery, and like 4 people responded, which is mad. It's absolutely mad that, you know, people were willing to give up their time to like go through portfolios, and people actually aren't always engaging in these things. You just assume that they are, and the competition is massive. And sometimes it isn't, because people are just too lazy to do it. So look for those opportunities. I think you'll get more out of, you know, having a portfolio surgery with someone, or actually sparking up a conversation with someone and asking them direct questions rather than just, what do you think of my portfolio? Or do you have jobs available? You know, send them one piece of work and be like, what would you do differently on this? Like, approach something differently. I think when we were at uni, we were always encouraged to do like mailers and things that would get under the noses of people at agencies that's just going to spark attention. And really it is just about sparking attention and finding a new way that other people aren't doing it to get noticed.
Contradictory to my point before, websites like Squarespace didn't exist. I sound so old, I'm more than that old. But like things like that didn't exist back then, so I didn't know how to do a good website.
I did mine on Squarespace. What are you talking about?
No.
Yeah, I did.
What?
Yeah, I did.
Well, we had Wix back in my day, and that was even before GoDaddy, and it was so
Head
crap.
of the curve.
I was just like, this is not doing my work any good. But now there's going to be portfolio templates out there,
Yeah.
which will probably
It's so
make it look
easy.
amazing. But yeah, I'm personally, if someone sends me their website, I'll very rarely click on it. If someone sends me their portfolio, I'll usually download it to have a look.